So, today's activity, we're going to be doing...
Soap making.
Yeah, we're going to make soap. It's actually a very simple process and one that should be done under adult supervision, but is great fun for kids as well. And the reason it should be done under adult supervision is because there are some ingredients that are not nice to play with. Hydroxides, in this case sodium hydroxide, although you can also use potassium hydroxide. So the basic idea of making soap is a chemical process known as
Saponification.
Saponification, which is familiar for people who speak Italian because sapone means
Soap.
soap. So saponification literally means
Making soap.
making soap, which is what we're going to do. So the basic idea is that you take a fat, in this case we'll use olive oil, which is kind of traditional here, being an olive oil producing area. Another fairly common oil that's used locally is almond oil, also produced locally. So you take a fat, it can be a vegetable oil or an animal fat, and you mix it with a hydroxide. In this case, we're going to use sodium hydroxide. It's also called caustic soda. It's used as drain cleaner, so you can find it in a hardware store. This is the chemical that you do have to be careful with. So we'll use gloves and also a mask when we deal with that. So basically you mix the two of those, it goes through a chemical process called hydrolysis, and in the end you get soap. It's that easy. So you just have to be a little bit careful at least one stage in the process, and after that it's pretty easy to do.
You just also have to be patient.
You also have to be patient because at the end
You need to wait 6 weeks.
you have to put it away for about 6 weeks to let it cure, and then you can use it. Okay, so what are we going to need for soap making?
You're going to need water, a fat. We're going to use olive oil, then caustic soda, some bowls to put the materials into before you mix them. Then we're going to use some essential oils just for fragrance. Then you need some molds
Why do we need molds?
because when you first make the soap, it's just liquid, so then you pour it into the mold, and then you wait for it to cure for 6 weeks, and then it becomes hard. So then you need something to mix with, something to mix in, so a mixing bowl, then safety equipment, gloves and mask, spoons, and then a scale. But for the caustic soda, because you need to measure it very precisely because it's very dangerous, so we're going to use 2 scales. This one measures 2 digits more than this one.
So you can find online a lot of different calculators that'll give you the right proportions in which to mix things. That's where we got our information from, is one of those calculators, and we recommend that you use those when determining how much of each ingredient to mix together. So we'll give you the process, but the numbers themselves, you'll want to use one of the calculators that are available. But one thing to keep in mind is that because the caustic soda is caustic, in other words it can burn your skin, you don't really want any of it left over in the end in the soap, otherwise it will burn your skin. You know, the soap you want to rub across your skin obviously in the end, and you don't want to rub caustic soda on your skin. So what you do is you discount the amount of caustic soda. So you undervalue the amount of caustic soda that you put into your soap when you're making it, and that will ensure that all of the caustic soda has gone through the reaction and it's no longer in caustic soda form, that it's in some other form, the form that you want to basically that it's all soap in the end. And that is called discounting. So we're going to use a 3% discount in our soap making process. That means that we're going to add 3% less caustic soda than you would if you wanted to, for all of the ingredients to mix together completely. So, and the result of that is that the soap is slightly less hard. So the higher the discount, the less hard the soap is in the end. It can remain a little bit more runny, which is also how they make shampoo, just by the way. So the bigger the discount, the runnier it is, the closer it is to shampoo. So that's also how you can make shampoo.
So now we're going to measure the oil, and we're going to measure it directly into the mixing bowl, because then we're going to add everything else to the oil. And for what we're doing, we're going to use 1,000 grams of olive oil. So let's do it. So one thing to keep in mind with the oil is that you don't really want to use this used oil, because that's the best oil. So we're using the oil from 3 years ago. But if you don't really have oils from more than just this year, then you can use the oil that's at the very bottom of the vat. So now we're going to add the essential oils, because both essential oils and olive oil, they're both fat. So we're going to use lemon, and for what we're doing, we're going to use 3 decent sized squirts of essential oils to make this soap smell good. And there we go. So now we're going to measure the water. We're going to do 304 grams of water. And you don't want to put the water in the mixing bowl like we did with the oil. Because first we want to mix the water with the caustic soda, and then we put it in with the oils. When measuring caustic soda, you obviously want some safety equipment like gloves, but then you also want a mask, because then when you're measuring it, you could breathe in some dust, so that would irritate your lungs, so then you want a mask.
Okay, so now we have all of our ingredients measured out. We have 130 grams of caustic soda, 304 grams of water, and 1,000 grams of olive oil. Now we need to mix them. So the mixing process goes like this. Still with the gloves and mask, you take the caustic soda, dump it into the water. Mix it with the spoon, not vigorously, you don't want it to splash around because it is caustic. Mix it up a little bit until all of the caustic soda is dissolved in the water. Now it'll get hot, but don't be alarmed, that's normal. Once it's dissolved, you take the caustic soda and water mixture and you pour it into the oil. And then you mix it slightly more vigorously with the whisk for maybe a minute until it's completely mixed. And while it's still liquid, pour it into the molds. It might start to harden up, you definitely want to get it into the molds before it starts to harden. Once it's in the molds, you put it on the shelf and come back 6 weeks later and you should have soap. So that's the process. So let's start mixing. Caustic soda into the water. All right, so it's 6 weeks later. Boy, that time really went fast, didn't it?
No.
Oh. So it's six weeks later, and our soap is done with its curing process. So it's solid, and it basically feels like soap now, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
And it smells kind of like a mix between olive oil and this one's lemon. The lavender is really strong.
Yeah.
Yeah. So now we're just going to take them out of the molds and cut them up into basically soap bar sizes, wrap them up in paper, and we're actually going to give these away. All right, so we're going to take them out of the mold, right?
Yeah.
So I'm going to use this knife and just get it in there and just never cut towards yourself. Cut all the way down and then unwrap it. Still a little bit soft inside here, but that'll harden up as time goes on.
Towards yourself.
And there's our soap, raw soap.